The chipped ceramic mug warmed my hands, a small comfort against the chill that always seemed to permeate our house. Lisa, have you seen my charger? My brother Mark barked from the living room, his voice laced with the usual impatience, like I was his personal tech support. Last seen in your black hole of a room, I muttered under my breath, loud enough for him to hear. He grunted in response, not bothering to look up from his phone. Typical. I glanced at the weather app on my own phone. The little red typhoon symbol was practically screaming. Auntie May said this one's supposed to be a big one, I commented, more to myself than anyone else. Yeah, the sky is falling, Mark scoffed, just like every other time. My parents were in the kitchen, their voices a low murmur, probably discussing the dwindling rice supply again. It was always a hot topic, especially with Mark's wife, Susan, currently gestating their second, or was it third, spawn. Every extra mouth was another drain on the family resources, and guess who always got the short end of the stick? A flicker of rebellion sparked within me. On my way back from the market yesterday, I'd bought a lottery ticket, a stupid, impulsive thing I knew, but a girl could dream, right? Maybe, just maybe, I could escape this purgatory of shared bedrooms and constant scrimping. I tucked the ticket safely into my wallet. The typhoon warnings grew more insistent throughout the day. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows. My parents' whispers grew more frantic. And then, the announcement. Lisa, my mother said, her voice tight, your father and I have been talking. With the typhoon coming, we don't have enough food for everyone. I stared at her, my jaw slack. You're kicking me out? My father avoided my gaze. It's for the best. Your brother's family needs the resources. You understand? Mark, ever the compassionate one, chimed in. Don't be dramatic, Lisa. It's just for a few days. A few days, I echoed, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Right, because I'm so expendable. My mother's face hardened. Don't be ungrateful. We've always provided for you. Provided, I repeated. Barely. While you fawn over Mark and his perfect little family. My voice trembled with a mixture of anger and hurt. Don't talk to your mother like that, my father warned. I grabbed my backpack, stuffing a few essentials inside. My ID, bank cards, and of course, the lottery ticket. Fine, I said, my voice flat. I'll leave. Don't worry, I won't burden you any longer. As I walked out the door, Max, my scruffy terrier mix, whined and followed me. Oh no, you're not taking that mutt, my mother said. He'll just be trouble during the storm. He might carry diseases, I said, a sudden inspiration striking me. You wouldn't want Susan and the baby getting sick, would you? My mother recoiled. Oh, good point. Fine, take him. The wind was a physical force now, pushing me back as I struggled down the street. Rain lashed down, stinging my face. The sky was a swirling mass of black clouds. I could barely see a foot in front of me. My phone buzzed with a text from Mark. Where are you going, Grandma's place? Yeah, I texted back, lying through my teeth. Grandma lived miles away, in a low-lying area that would be flooded for sure. My family would be relieved, one less person to worry about. The storm intensified. A tree branch crashed down nearby, narrowly missing me. I stumbled, falling to my knees. The wind ripped at my clothes, the rain felt like needles. I could hear the roar of the typhoon, a monstrous sound that promised destruction. And then a wave, a massive, unforgiving wave that swept me off my feet, carrying me away into the swirling darkness. I gasped, choking on the salty water, my lungs burning. I saw a fleeting image of my family's house, the lights still on, before everything went black. Then, a different vision, my family home, now battered and broken, collapsing under the force of the storm. Screams and cries filled the air. A twisted sense of satisfaction washed over me. They got what they deserved. And then nothing, until I woke with a gasp, my heart pounding. I was lying in my own bed, the familiar floral patterned sheets beneath me. Sunlight streamed through the window. The storm was gone. Or was it? I checked my phone. The time read 2 p.m., 5 hours before the typhoon was supposed to hit. I sat up, my mind reeling. This couldn't be real, could it? My breath hitched. This This was impossible, but the memory of the wave, the choking water, the house collapsing, it was all too real. I scrambled out of bed, my heart hammering against my ribs. The lottery ticket. I had to check. I rummaged through my wallet, my fingers fumbling with the worn leather. There it was, the flimsy piece of paper, a potential key to a completely different life. I stared at it, a slow grin spreading across my face. Second chances, they actually existed. My mind raced. What to do? How to play this? My first instinct was to scream at them, to unleash all the pent-up resentment and tell them exactly what I thought of their sensible eviction plan. But that wouldn't get me anywhere. Revenge was a dish best served cold, and right now, I needed to play the long game. A new plan began to form in my mind, a plan fueled by a potent cocktail of anger, opportunism, and a dash of dark humor. I would play along. I would be the sensible daughter they always wanted. And then, when the time was right, I took a deep breath, composing myself. I walked into the kitchen, where my parents were already bickering about something or other. "Morning," I said, my voice carefully neutral. My mother looked surprised. "You're up early." "Yeah," I said. "I was thinking." "You're right. It's probably best if I go. One less mouth to feed, right?" I even managed a small, pathetic-sounding sigh. My father exchanged a look with my mother. "See, Lisa's being sensible," he said, puffing out his chest a little. "She understands the situation." Mark, still glued to his phone, grunted in approval. "Good, less drama." I bit back a sarcastic retort. "I'll pack my things," I said. "I'll head over to Grandma's later today." "Good, good," my mother said, clearly relieved. "Just try not to bother her too much. She's not as young as she used to be." "Don't worry," I said sweetly. "I wouldn't dream of it." Back in my room, I started packing. Essentials only. ID, bank cards, a change of clothes. And of course, the lottery ticket. I tucked it into a secure pocket in my backpack. This time, it wasn't just a dream. It was a plan. Max whined at my feet, sensing the change in routine. "Come here, boy," I said, scratching him behind the ears. He was coming with me. He was the only member of this family who had ever shown me any real affection. When I went back to the kitchen, my mother eyed Max with suspicion. "You're not taking that dog, are you?" "He might carry diseases," I said, echoing my earlier excuse. "You wouldn't want Susan and the baby getting sick, would you?" My mother's face wrinkled in disgust. "Oh, you're right. Fine, take him. But don't expect us to take him back after the storm." "Wouldn't dream of it," I said, a hint of steel entering my voice. As I walked out the door, Max trotting happily by my side, I glanced back at the house. It looked so normal, so ordinary. But I knew what was coming. I knew the storm that was brewing, both outside and within. And I knew that this time, I wouldn't be caught in it. A wave of detachment washed over me. It was like watching a play, knowing the ending, but not being able to stop it. I felt a pang of something. Not sadness, not exactly. More like a strange sense of closure. This was it. The end of one chapter and the beginning of another. And this time, I was writing the story. My brother's van. A clunky, gas-guzzling beast he rarely let anyone touch. But desperate times called for desperate measures. And besides, he owed me. Years of being his personal errand runner, his homework helper, his general doormat, consider this a small repayment. I hot-wired the ignition, a skill I'd picked up from watching too many action movies, and peeled out of the driveway, Max panting happily in the passenger seat. The drive to the city was surreal. The sky was darkening, the wind was picking up, but I felt calm, almost detached, like I was watching a movie, a disaster flick where I knew the ending. Except this time, I wasn't just a spectator. I was the director. I pulled up to the Grand Azure Hotel, a gleaming tower of glass and steel that looked like it could withstand a nuclear blast, let alone a measly typhoon. The contrast between this opulent haven and my family's crumbling house was almost comical. It was a small act of defiance, a symbolic middle finger to the universe and my parents. Inside, the lobby was all marble and chandeliers, a world away from the cramped, cluttered rooms I'd grown up in. I checked in, using my own credit card, another small victory, and requested a room with a city view. Preferably one that won't get blown away, I added dryly to the polite but slightly confused receptionist. My room was, well, it was the kind of room that made you want to take a bubble bath and order room service. A king-size bed, a flat-screen TV the size of my living room wall, and a bathroom that could probably house my entire family. Max, clearly impressed, immediately claimed the plush armchair by the window. Now, for the practicalities, I headed down to the hotel's convenience store and stocked up on supplies. Bottled water, enough non-perishable food to last a week, batteries, a first aid kit, and of course, a few treats for Max. I even grabbed a bottle of champagne, because why not? If the world was ending, I was going to celebrate in style. Back in my room, I watched the news reports on the approaching typhoon. The images were dramatic: swirling clouds, flooded streets, terrified faces. But I felt nothing. No fear, no anxiety. Just a strange sense of liberation. I thought about my family, huddled together in that old house, playing poker, oblivious to the impending doom. They were probably still complaining about me, about how I'd abandoned them. The irony was almost too much to bear. A wave of anger washed over me, a familiar but now strangely distant emotion. They had kicked me out, treated me like I was nothing, and now they expected me to care about them? They could stew in their own selfishness for all I cared? But the anger quickly subsided, replaced by something else. Relief, a sense of lightness. I was free, free from their judgment, their criticism, their constant demands. I was finally in control of my own life. The storm hit the city with full force. The wind howled like a banshee, the rain lashed against the windows, and the building shuddered occasionally. But up here on the 27th floor, I felt safe and secure. I curled up on the sofa with Max, the champagne chilling in the ice bucket, and watched the storm rage outside. It was a symphony of destruction, a reminder of the power of nature. And for the first time in a long time, I felt at peace. Back at the house, the atmosphere was, well, let's just say it wasn't exactly somber. My family, bless their oblivious hearts, were gathered around the dining table, engaged in a heated game of poker. Chips were stacked high, cards were dealt with dramatic flair, and the air was thick with the smell of cheap instant noodles. "Come on, Mark! Ante up!" my father boomed, slapping the table with his hand. "Don't be a chicken!" Mark grumbled something about being low on funds, but tossed in a few more chips. Susan, her belly protruding precariously, watched with a bored expression, occasionally reaching for a handful of chips herself. "Anyone seen Lisa?" my mother asked, not bothering to look up from her cards. I told her to pick up some chicken from Abang's. He's got a special on today. "Probably hiding somewhere, sulking," Mark muttered. "She's always so dramatic." "Well, tell her to hurry up," my father said. "I'm starving." The storm raged outside, rattling the windows, but inside, it was business as usual, just another Tuesday night for the family Von Trapp. My phone buzzed. It was my mother. "Lisa, where's the chicken?" the text read. "We're hungry." I sighed. They really had a one-track mind, didn't they? "Sorry, Mom," I texted back, channeling my inner damsel in distress. "The wind is crazy out here. I'm stuck at the market. They're saying the roads might be closed soon." "Well, hurry up," she replied, "and pick up some extra power banks too. The power keeps flickering." "Okay, Mom," I texted back, adding a pathetic-sounding emoji for good measure. A few minutes later, my phone rang. It was Mark. "Lisa, what's taking so long?" he barked. "We're starving here, and bring some snacks too. Susan's craving something sweet." "I'm trying, Mark," I said, my voice dripping with fake desperation. "But the storm is really bad. I'm kind of scared." "Hey, don't be ridiculous," he scoffed. "Just get the stuff and come home. And don't forget the drinks. We're almost out of beer." I hung up, shaking my head. They were unbelievable, completely self-absorbed, and utterly clueless. Another text from my mother. "Lisa, if you're not back soon, we're going to eat without you. So," I chuckled to myself, "go right ahead. Enjoy your last supper." A new idea sparked in my mind. Time for a little drama. I called Mark back. "Mark," I said, my voice trembling, I think I'm in trouble. The wind, it's so strong. I think I'm stranded." The market, it's flooded. What? He said, his voice laced with annoyance. Why didn't you just stay home? I tried to, I said, sniffling convincingly. But Mom told me to go. She said it was important. Ugh, he groaned. This is just great. Now what are we supposed to do? I don't know, I said, playing the helpless victim. I'm really scared. Just stay put, he said. We'll figure something out. I hung up, a smile playing on my lips. They were so predictable. A few hours later, as the storm reached its peak, my phone buzzed with another text. This time, it was from my father. Lisa, are you okay? I don't know, I texted back. The wind. I think something hit me. I'm hurt. A few minutes of silence, then a reply from my mother. Lisa, if you don't make it. I held my breath, waiting for the inevitable. We'll have to arrange a ghost marriage for you, she texted. Old Mr. Wang offered a very generous dowry. I stared at the message, my jaw slack. They were actually serious. Even in the face of a potential tragedy, their minds were on money. It was beyond parody. I closed my eyes, a wave of dark satisfaction washing over me. They were about to get their just desserts, and I had a front row seat. The Grand Azure swayed slightly, a gentle rocking motion that was almost soothing. Outside, the world was a maelstrom. Rain lashed against the windows, the wind howled like a tormented spirit, and the city lights flickered and died one by one. But inside my luxurious cocoon, I was warm, dry, and strangely at peace. I'd hacked into my brother's home security system earlier, another perk of being the family tech support, and now with a glass of champagne in hand, I watched the drama unfold on my laptop screen. It was better than any reality TV show. The first sign of trouble was a flickering light in the living room. Then, a window shattered, sending shards of glass flying across the room. My mother shrieked, her voice barely audible over the roar of the wind. Mark scrambled to cover the gaping hole with a blanket, cursing under his breath. The water came next. It seeped in through the cracks in the walls, forming puddles on the floor. Soon the puddles became streams, the streams became rivers. The furniture started to float, bumping against each other like drunken sailors. My family huddled together on the remaining dry patch of floor, their faces etched with fear. Susan, her eyes wide with panic, clutched her swollen belly. The kids were crying, their wails echoing through the house. What are we going to do? My mother wailed, her voice cracking. I don't know, Mark shouted back, his face pale. The phone lines are down. We're trapped. Lisa, my father yelled, his voice hoarse. Where's Lisa? She should be here. I smirked, right on cue, always the afterthought, until they needed something. The house groaned, the walls creaking, ominously. A crack appeared in the ceiling, widening with alarming speed. Then, with a deafening roar, the roof caved in, sending debris raining down on the terrified occupants. The screen went black. I sat there for a moment, the silence almost deafening. Then I closed the laptop, took a sip of champagne, and let out a long, slow breath. It was over. No tears, no regrets, no second thoughts. Just a quiet sense of finality. They had made their choices, and now they were facing the consequences. I had no sympathy, no remorse. They had shown me none after all. I reached for my phone, my fingers hovering over the power button. One last act remained, a symbolic gesture, a clean break from the past. I pressed the button, and the screen went dark. The insistent ringing pierced through the blissful silence of my five-star sanctuary. I glanced at the unfamiliar number flashing on my phone screen, a frown creasing my brow. Who would be calling me? My family, the ones who'd so readily discarded me, were presumably, well, let's just say they weren't exactly in a position to make phone calls. Curiosity piqued, I answered. Hello? A shaky voice, choked with emotion, crackled through the receiver. Lisa? Lisa, is that you? It was my mother, but her voice, it was different. Stripped of its usual imperiousness, replaced with a raw vulnerability that I'd never heard before. Mom, what's wrong? Where are you? The hospital, she sobbed. We're at the hospital. Mark, Susan, the children. My mind raced. The house, the collapse, survivors. A wave of something washed over me. Not guilt, not exactly. More like a grim satisfaction mixed with a perverse curiosity. What happened? I asked, feigning concern. The storm, she wailed. The house. It collapsed. Mark, he's what? I pressed, my voice carefully neutral. He's gone, she whispered, the words barely audible. And Susan, she lost the baby. The children, they're injured. We need you, Lisa. A flicker of something akin to pity stirred within me, but it was quickly extinguished by the memory of their callous indifference, their blatant disregard for my well-being. Need me? I echoed, a hint of steel creeping into my voice. You kicked me out, remember? Told me I was a burden. Now you need me? Lisa, please, she pleaded. Don't be like this. We're family? Family, I scoffed. Since when? You treated me like an unwanted guest, an inconvenience, and now suddenly I'm family? We were wrong, she sobbed. We made a mistake. Please, Lisa, come to the hospital. We need you. I hesitated. Part of me, the part that still clung to some naive notion of familial love, wanted to rush to their side, to offer comfort and support. But the other part, the part that had witnessed their true colors, held me back. Fine, I said finally, my voice flat. I'll come, but don't expect miracles. The hospital was a scene of controlled chaos. Injured people crowded the hallways, their moans and cries echoing through the sterile corridors. The smell of antiseptic and fear hung heavy in the air. I found my family huddled in a small private room. My mother, her face streaked with tears, rushed towards me, clutching my arm. Lisa, thank goodness you're here, she cried. We were so worried. I gently disengaged myself from her grasp. How is everyone? My mother gestured towards the beds, lining the room. My father lay unconscious, his head bandaged. My nieces and nephew, their faces pale and drawn, were hooked up to various machines. And in the corner, a small, shrouded figure lay still. Susan. I felt a pang of something, sadness, regret. It was hard to tell, but it was quickly overshadowed by the anger that simmered beneath the surface. This is all your fault, my mother hissed, her voice laced with venom. If you hadn't left, none of this would have happened. I stared at her incredulous. My fault? You kicked me out. Remember? You should have come back, she insisted. You should have known we needed you. Known? I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. You never gave me a chance to know anything. You were too busy playing poker and ordering chicken to even notice I was gone. Don't you dare talk to your mother like that, my father rasped, his eyes flickering open. Oh, I'm sorry, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Did I interrupt your poker game? Or were you too busy planning my ghost marriage to Mr. Wang? My mother's face flushed with shame. That was just talk, she stammered. Talk that revealed your true priorities, I retorted. Money over family. Always? The room fell silent. My nieces and nephews stirred in their beds, their eyes wide with confusion and fear. I felt a pang of sympathy for them, innocent victims of their parents' selfishness. Lisa, my father said, his voice weak. We need your help. The house, it's gone. We have nothing. We need money. For medical bills, for a new place to live. Money, I echoed, raising an eyebrow. And where do you expect me to get that money? You have a job, he said. You can take out a loan. I can what? I challenged, crossing my arms. Sacrifice my own future to bail you out? After you threw me to the wolves? We're family, he pleaded. We need you. Family? I scoffed. You've already proven what family means to you. It's a transaction, a business deal. And I'm not interested in being part of your bankrupt enterprise. The conflict escalated. Accusations flew, tears were shed, and the fragile facade of family unity crumbled completely. I stood my ground, refusing to be swayed by their guilt trips or their desperate pleas. They had made their bed, and now they could lie in it. As I walked out of the hospital room, leaving them to their misery, I felt a strange sense of liberation. It was painful, yes, but it was also necessary. I had finally cut the cord, severed the ties that had bound me to a toxic past. I was free. The audacity of it all was almost impressive. There I was, sipping a perfectly chilled mango smoothie by the rooftop pool of the Grand Azure, when my phone pinged with a notification. It was a news alert, with a thumbnail that made my jaw drop. There they were, my dear family plastered across the screen, looking utterly pathetic. The headline screamed, "Tragic family loses everything in Typhoon, abandoned by daughter." Below, a video played showing my parents, bandaged and teary-eyed, recounting their sob story to a sympathetic reporter. My nieces and nephew, looking appropriately traumatized, were strategically positioned in the background. "We lost everything," my mother wailed, dabbing at her eyes with a suspiciously clean handkerchief. "Our home, our belongings, even our son-in-law, and Lisa, our own daughter. She abandoned us. She left us to die." My father chimed in, his voice trembling with feigned grief. "We just want our daughter back. We want to be a family again." The comment section was a cesspool of sympathy and outrage. "Poor family," one user wrote. "That daughter is a monster." Another added, "Someone should find her and make her pay." I almost choked on my smoothie. The sheer audacity of it all was breathtaking. They were playing the victim card, milking the tragedy for all it was worth. And the gullible public was eating it up. A slow, cold fury ignited within me. They had crossed a line. This wasn't just about the past anymore. This was about them actively trying to destroy my present, my future. And I wasn't going to let them get away with it. It was time for a counteroffensive. I opened my laptop, my fingers flying across the keyboard. I accessed the hotel's secure Wi-Fi network, then logged into my brother's home security system. The footage from the night of the storm was still there, a digital record of their callous indifference and shameless greed. I downloaded the relevant clips, the ones that showed them playing poker while the storm raged, the ones that captured their gleeful anticipation of my demise, the ones that revealed their cold-hearted plans for my ghost marriage. Then I compiled them into a single damning video. With a few clicks, I uploaded the video to every social media platform I could think of. I tagged news outlets, influencers, even the reporter who had interviewed my family. And then I sat back and watched the fireworks. The internet exploded. The video went viral, spreading like wildfire. The comments section, once filled with sympathy for my family, now overflowed with outrage and disgust. "Liars!" one user screamed. "Manipulators!" another accused. The tide had turned. The backlash was swift and brutal. The news outlets that had initially championed my family's story now issued retractions and apologies. Influencers who had expressed sympathy now condemned their actions. The public, once eager to offer support, now turned on them with a vengeance. My family's carefully constructed facade crumbled. Their live streaming attempts were met with a barrage of insults and threats. Their pleas for donations were ignored. Their attempts to defend themselves only dug them deeper into the hole. They were left destitute, humiliated, and utterly alone. The house was gone, their reputation was in tatters, and their social media accounts were flooded with hate. They had played a dangerous game, and they had lost. As I watched their downfall, a sense of calm satisfaction settled over me. Justice, of a sort, had been served. They had tried to manipulate the narrative, to paint me as the villain, but the truth had prevailed. I had exposed their lies, reclaimed my story, and emerged from the ashes, stronger and more determined than ever. The phone rang, the same unfamiliar number flashing on the screen. I hesitated for a moment, then answered. "Hello?" It was my mother, her voice hoarse and desperate. "Lisa, please. We're sorry. We'll do anything. Just come back." I listened to her pleas, her promises, her desperate attempts to salvage the situation, but her words were hollow, meaningless. The damage was done. "No," I said coldly, the memory of their callous eviction echoing in my mind. The line went silent, then a choked sob, followed by the click of the phone disconnecting. I set the phone down, a small smile playing on my lips. The chapter was closed. The past was finally behind me, and I was free. The lottery headquarters was surprisingly quiet for a place that dealt in life-changing sums of money. I walked up to the counter, the worn ticket clutched in my hand, a smirk playing on my lips. The clerk, a bored-looking woman with chipped nail polish, scanned the ticket with a practiced eye. Her eyes widened. "Congratulations, miss." She glanced at my ID. On that, on it go, Lisa, you've won the jackpot. I tried to maintain a casual demeanor, but a thrill shot through me. This was it. The golden ticket. The ultimate escape hatch. "Oh," I said, feigning nonchalance. "That's nice." The ensuing process was a blur of paperwork, legal jargon, and financial advice. I signed forms, listened to explanations, and tried not to let the enormity of the situation overwhelm me. Finally, I walked out of the building, a certified millionaire, with a hefty check tucked safely in my bag. My first stop was the bank. I deposited the check, watched the numbers appear on the screen, and let out a long, slow breath. It was real. I was free. Next, I made a sizable donation to the Typhoon Relief Fund. It felt good, a way to give back, to help those who had genuinely suffered from the storm, and it was a subtle way to distance myself from my family's greed, to show the world that I wasn't like them. With the remaining funds, I consulted a financial advisor. We discussed investments, long-term plans, and the possibility of starting my own business. For the first time in my life, I felt in control of my destiny. No more scrimping and saving, no more living paycheck to paycheck, no more being beholden to anyone. The final step was the most symbolic. I booked a one-way ticket to a new country, a place where no one knew me, where I could reinvent myself, start fresh. It was a clean break from the past, a chance to build a life on my own terms. As the plane took off, I gazed out the window at the receding cityscape, a bittersweet feeling washing over me. There were memories there, both good and bad. But it was time to let go, to embrace the unknown, to create a future that was truly mine. My new life was, well, it was everything my old life wasn't. I found a cozy apartment in a charming neighborhood, enrolled in language classes, and explored the local culture. I made new friends, people who saw me for who I was, not for what I could do for them. I even adopted a stray cat, a fluffy ginger I named Lucky. The phone rang one evening, the familiar international dialing code flashing on the screen. I hesitated for a moment, then answered. "Hello?" It was my father, his voice raspy and weak. "Lisa, it's me. Your mother and we're struggling. We lost everything. We need your help." I listened to his pleas, his thinly veiled attempts to guilt-trip me, his promises to make things right, but his words were empty, devoid of any real remorse or understanding. "Which home?" I asked coldly, the memory of their betrayal still fresh in my mind. The line went silent. Then, a heavy sigh, followed by the click of the phone disconnecting. I set the phone down, a wave of sadness washing over me. But it wasn't the sadness of loss or regret. It was the sadness of acceptance. I had finally let go of the past, of the family that had never truly been mine. And in their place, I had found something far more valuable: freedom, independence, and the chance to create a life filled with love, laughter, and genuine connection. The aroma of freshly baked bread wafted through the air, mingling with the scent of jasmine blossoms. I sat at a small cafe table, sunlight warming my face, a steaming cup of coffee in my hand. Across from me, Elena, my vibrant Italian landlady, chattered away about the upcoming weekend market, her words a melodic blend of Italian and broken English. I smiled, nodding along, feeling a warmth spread through me that had nothing to do with the sunshine. Life in Florence was, well, it was dolce vita, as they said. My days were filled with exploring hidden alleyways, marveling at Renaissance masterpieces, and practicing my Italian with enthusiastic locals. I'd even joined a painting class, rediscovering a childhood passion I'd long suppressed. Sometimes, when the city noises faded and the scent of a particular spice drifted by, I'd find myself transported back to that cramped kitchen in my old house. The memory of my mother's nagging voice, the constant bickering, the stifling atmosphere. It all seemed so distant now, like a faded photograph. The contrast was stark, almost unbelievable. Here I was surrounded by warmth, laughter, and genuine connection. My neighbors, a colorful cast of characters, greeted me with smiles and invitations to impromptu gatherings. My classmates, a mix of nationalities and ages, shared their stories and encouraged my artistic endeavors. Even the barista at my favorite cafe knew my order by heart. I'd found a community, a chosen family built on mutual respect and shared experiences. It was a far cry from the transactional relationships I'd known before, where love was conditional and loyalty was a bargaining chip. One evening, as I wandered through the bubbly gardens, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, I stumbled upon a group of musicians playing traditional Italian folk songs. I sat on a stone bench, listening to the melodies, feeling a sense of peace settle over me. It was in that moment, surrounded by beauty and serenity, that I realized the true extent of my transformation. I wasn't just living a new life, I was a new person. The timid, insecure girl who had once walked out of that storm-battered house was gone, replaced by a confident, independent woman who embraced life with open arms. I had explored hidden depths within myself, discovered passions I never knew I had, and forged connections that nourished my soul. I had learned to trust my instincts, to stand up for myself, and to create my own happiness. The future stretched before me, a vast canvas of possibilities. Maybe I'd open a small art gallery, showcasing local artists. Maybe I'd travel the world, immersing myself in different cultures. Maybe I'd simply continue to savor the simple pleasures of life in Florence, surrounded by beauty, friendship, and the intoxicating aroma of freshly baked bread. The possibilities were endless, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly free to explore them all.